On April 22nd, 1974, 20-year-old Stanley Walker and 19-year-old Michelle Ansley are getting ready to end their shifts at the Hi-Fi Audio Store in Utah, when two 19-year-old Air Force airmen, named Dale, Shelby, Pierre, and William Andrews walk into the store armed with weapons right before closing, while a third man named Keith Rogers waits outside in a van acting as the getaway car. At first glance, this was meant to be a robbery, but things quickly take a horrific turn. While robbers Dale and William force the two employees into the basement of the store. As they are tying up Stanley and Michelle, the front door of the store opens. In walks a 16-year-old named Courtney, who came in to speak with one of the shop associates. As he's walking through the store, he's quickly apprehended by the two robbers and brought into the basement with the other two employees. As time passes and Stanley fails to come home, his father, Orrin, becomes concerned and goes to the audio store looking for him. As Orrin walks through the store and calls Stanley's name, he's quickly greeted by the two robbers, Dale and William, with a weapon that's pointed at him. Just like the others, he's forced to go into the basement where they tie him up. As time continues to pass, the 16-year-old's mother, Carol, then goes to the audio store looking for her son. And again, the same thing happens. We now have 5 hostages in the basement of this audio store. It's in this basement that some of the most horrific torture takes place. The robber Dale instructs William to go out to their getaway car to get a bottle of Drano. William comes back and Dale pours the bottle of Drano into a cup and tells all 5 hostages that they need to drink it. He lies and says that it's just vodka mixed with sleeping pills. Together, Dale and William force the victims' mouths open and pour the Drano down their throats. The main ingredient in Drano is sodium hydroxide, and when it comes into contact with skin, it begins to instantly eat away at the flesh. Almost instantly, the skin around the hostage's mouth begins to peel off and ooze. Oozing blisters form on their lips, their tongue, the inside of their mouths, all the way down to their esophagus and into their stomach. For perspective, the skin in their throats swelled so much that they almost couldn't even breathe. In extreme agony, all of the hostages begin to scream in horrific pain. So Dale and William try to tape all of the victims' mouths shut, so this way they can't spit out any of the Drano, they can't vomit it up, but also to quiet their screams. But the gushing liquids oozing from the victims' mouths kept the tape from even sticking. Out of all the victims, Orrin Walker, Stanley's father, is the last one to be given the Drano, and once he sees clearly how everybody is screaming in agonizing pain, he makes a very quick decision to not actually drink it, but put it in his mouth and let it dribble down his face. Just like the others, he is blistering and oozing, his skin is peeling off on his face, but he starts to mimic the screams of everybody else to try to save his life. But for Dale, he's annoyed that it's taking so long for the Drano to end all of the hostages' lives. So he pulls out his weapon and shoots into Carol's head, the mother. He then turns to her son Courtney and shoots into his head as well, and then faces Orrin, the father, and manages to graze the back of his head. Dale then fires directly into the head of Stanley, ending his life. As the victims lay there in a pool of blood, Dale instructs William to leave the room. He then points his weapon at 19-year-old Michelle, who has half her face melted off, and instructs her to remove her clothes, before he brutally forces himself on top of her and assaults her in horrific ways, right there in front of all of the victims. And then once he's done, he lets her go to the bathroom in front of him while he watches her, and then grabs her by her arm and throws her face down into the pool of blood with the other victims. At this point, she is still nude, and Father Orrin still recalls her begging and crying, pleading for her life, that she's too young to die. And Dale just blankly looks at her and shoots her right in her head. When Dale and William go to leave and go upstairs to the audio store to actually burglarize the place, they notice that the father, Orrin, is still breathing. They attempt to strangle him with a wire, but for them it was taking too long, so they proceed to put a ballpoint pen into his ear. They put him on his side, and then they repeatedly stomp on the pen, forcing it to go not just through his eardrum, but all the way through his throat to the other side. The two men then go upstairs and steal roughly $24,000 worth of audio equipment before leaving. The bodies of the victims were not discovered between 3 to 4 hours later, when Orrin's concerned wife and their other son go to the audio store to see what's taking their son and then their father so long to come home. When the mother and son walk through the doors, they can hear moaning coming from the basement. And when they go down there, that's when they're met with a truly horrific scene. At this point, Stanley and Michelle are both dead, but Carol, the mother, is still breathing. She unfortunately would pass away in the ambulance on the way to the hospital and would be pronounced dead there. 16-year-old son Courtney manages to survive the shot to his head, but it comes with a big price. It left him with lifelong brain damage and extensive memory loss. The condition also resulted in chronic pain for the rest of his life. And since he suffered memory loss, he couldn't testify against the men who did this to him. He spent 7 months in the ICU before being released. He would pass away 28 years later at the age of only 44 years old in 2002. The father, Aaron, manages to survive the chemical burns, the gunshot to the back of his head, and also the ballpoint pen that was stomped through and punctured his eardrum and went through his throat. He would be the only survivor to testify against these two men. And if you'd like a part 2 to go over what happened to these two men, how they were caught in the end, let me know and I'll make it.